in the regions, then we need to start giving that opportunity to celebrate. Kia ora tātou.
The Honourable Paul Goldsmith.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, this government, with its reckless disregard for the drivers of this economy, its arrogance towards its critics, its lack of self-discipline, its replacement of the previous government's clearly articulated economic plan with random and naive do-goodery, is putting this country's economic prosperity at risk, Mr Speaker. A weaker national economy means fewer opportunities for New Zealanders. A weaker economy means young Kiwis will decide their prospects are better overseas, quite probably in Australia, where the economy is picking up. A weaker economy means less money available for world-class healthcare, for access to the latest medicines and the latest technology. It means less money available to help those in need. And now, how can this possibly be happening at a time when our terms of trade, what New Zealand sells into the world, is at record high prices? And this government needs to take some responsibility for what's going on. It needs to take responsibility for business confidence falling through the floor. In particular, the measure of businesses' own assessment of their future investment. And the latest ANZ survey showed that the figure for New Zealand businesses' assessment of their own future activity is falling. It's now plus 14, which is very close to the level where the economy is starting to stall. And yet Mr Parker, the Minister of Economic Development, says that's all junk. It's junk. And the Deputy Prime Minister, Winston Peters, agrees with him. It's junk. Well, the ANZ said in defence of their survey after Mr Parker's attack, it's a service of business expectations of their own activity. This maps well with official GDP figures produced by Stats, meaning it provides a reliable and robust gauge of business activity. So it's an unbelievably arrogant thing to say, to call it junk. I mean, in effect, what he's saying is that the 1,500-odd business people who are talking about what they're planning to do in the next year don't know what they're talking about. He knows better. Their concerns aren't valid. It's no surprise that business confidence and business investment intentions are going down. And primarily, it's because there is so much uncertainty in this economy. New investment leads to jobs and growth, and would-be investors are keeping their hands in their pockets. Everyone I talk to is keeping their hands in their pockets and not investing, because everywhere they look, they see uncertainty. They don't know whether they're going to be facing a capital gains tax or not. They're uncertain about the effect of the new labour laws and the strengthening of union powers, which are seeing strikes everywhere we look. They're uncertain if they're a foreign investor whether they're welcome or not, and they're probably not welcome. And they're uncertain about the decision-making processes in this government, as we've seen with the oil and gas decision, where a major economic decision was made in the absence of any detailed advice and in the absence of a proper cabinet process. And they see an arrogant government that has no sympathy with the wealth creators in this economy. We have an economic development minister, as I say, who thinks that their opinion is junk. We have a workplace relations minister who says that if they're worried about increased labour costs, then businesses are just not resilient enough. And of course, finally, we have the regional economic development minister who goes around attacking business leaders and calling for their sacking and their resignation. And on that point, the most alarming element in that is the chaos that it points to in this government. So we see Mr Jones and his leader, Winston Peters, in open defiance of the Prime Minister. Let's recall the sequence of events. He blurted out an attack because a few days had gone past and he hadn't been in the news, so he blurted out this attack on Fonterra's leaders. He had been warned by the Prime Minister before, when he attacked Air New Zealand, not to do it again. He did it again. And then she came along and said, rather hopefully, well, he was speaking in a personal capacity, not as a minister. She remembered she said that 4 times, end of story, end of story. Now, nobody believed that, but at least that might have created a fig leaf that she could have stood behind. And if it had stopped there, it might have gone away. But it didn't stop there, of course, because then, immediately afterwards, Shane Jones came along and rolled over that fig leaf with his steam roller and said, actually, in the House, I stand by all those statements, and continued his attack on Fonterra's leadership in this House, speaking as a minister. So he made the Prime Minister look like a twit. He made her look weak. And he's done it again in this House attacking Fonterra in open defiance of the Minister. And the only point that he's making, the message is clear, that the Prime Minister may be in office, but she's not in power, because New Zealand First is the one that's calling the shots.
Angie Warren-Clark.
Mr. Speaker, today I'm going to take a call